Hello everyone, my name is Grant and this is an introduction video to Victoria 2 Out of Darkness. Victoria 2 is from Paradox. It's a grand strategy game like Europe Universalis 4 and Crusader Kings 2, but like any of the series, it has its own gameplay, and unfortunately it's one of the older games, so it's not quite as polished. We'll just hop right in. Go political, and share some things. You'll notice we have there are no pop-ups there about things you should look at. That's stuff that only is in the newer games. So Victoria 2 can be very daunting when you come in unprepared. That's why I'm making this introduction, to give people who have never played this game an idea of what to do and what is stuff for. So, like in most Paradox games, you can play as any country in the world. You can click at. They're all there. And for this for this introduction, I've chosen Austria. And let's start. The most important part, or diverges from other games from Paradox, is your score and your rank. So you'll see this right here. We have three scores: this prestige, industrial power, and military power. We have a score in each of these, and this score gives us a rank among the countries of the world. Our overall rank, there's only one, is determined by our scores. It doesn't add our ranks together and divide them to three, it adds our scores together. So let's look at this. Here we have the list on the diplomacy of all countries in the world, and we have ordered them by rank. So UK is the number one, and we can see that their score is pretty massive compared to ours. Like, let's see, we have 100, yeah, they have 200, they have twice our score. So they're solidly in rank 1. Let's see, the Russian Empire, 66, 40. It closes. There's no great difference between the greater powers, but I will get to that in a bit. Because your rank has an actual gameplay impact. It's not like in Crusader Kings 2 or in Europa Universalis, where your rank is something you see at the end of the game and say, well, you've done good, have a pat on the head. This is something that influences your gameplay. Because among all countries in the world, only the ones ranked 1 to 8 are considered great powers. And a great power gets bonuses and abilities. You can see this here for our prestige score. As a great power, we get prestige just for being a great power. We'll get continuously we'll get prestige for that. After the great powers, the numbers 9 to 16 are secondary powers. They don't get the bonuses of a great power, but they and great powers are the only countries we're allowed to colonize all this grey stuff here. You can see everything that's grey and is not Austria can be colonized if you're close enough. So we could set some settlers there, and over time we could colonize this, but only if you're a great or a secondary power. If you're not in the top 16, you're a civilized power or uncivilized power, and those can't colonize. You have to rise in rank so you can colonize. And that leads us to the next question for newcomers. What do I do in this game? Like, what's your goal? And, well, you have your score here, so it's not pretty hard. You want to raise your prestige, you want to raise your industrial power, and you want to raise your military power. That's the goal. Man, you can have, of course, have your own goals. Like, say, I want to conquer that specific part of land, or I want to dismantle Russia, because why not? But overall, these three scores are what you will concentrate on. You want to have more prestige, so what do you need to do? You need to win wars, you need to win battles. you need to make the right decisions. When the game asks you, do you care about some of your people dying? And the answer is, yes, I care, I will send them money, and they like you for that, or is it, who cares? You get some prestige, there you have it. You'll get a lot of those events, and the choice will often be, do you give a damn or do you not? You can also research some technology, but I will get into that in a bit later. Those are basically your prestige factors. Well, colonizing to completing a colonization project and getting a colony gives you prestige too. So once you can colonize, there is a race for this. The other nations will want to do it too, and you have to fight for your right to colonize Africa or some island down there. Industrial power. Now here comes the fun part, because this is the part you don't know yet or have never experienced yet in a Paradox game too. This is the age of industrialization. At the game start, this is only the UK was pretty much industrialized, and everyone else is trying to catch up. So, if we go there, we should see what do we get our industrial power from? In this case, we get it from countries who are working together with us. But if we had factories of our own, that would be a list of our most industrious regions. Basically, the more factories you have and the bigger they are, the higher the industrial power. It's a very straightforward concept, made harder by political concepts that we'll go into later. Basically, they have to make money to stay working and open. So you'll have to take a look at that. And military power, pretty much the easiest ones. You see it. It looks at your army. How many soldiers do you have? How many officers do you have? Leaders. And if you build a navy, it will take your navy into account too, of course. But it will also look at your technology level for your army, like what weapons do you use, what tactics. It takes all of that together, and the way your nation, how they look at the military. You can have policies for that. We'll talk about that in a bit. Basically, it takes all of that together to give you a military score. Obviously, if you're pacifist, you'll have a lower military score. Even if you have the same number of units and the same technology, you'll have less military power than a very ambitious country that wants to declare war all the time. So let's go with industry, because as we said, it's relatively simple to rise, but it's a very complicated part of the game. You'll see that a lot in Victoria 2. It's simple in concept, but pretty complicated when you get to it. So, of course, we can't do that right now. Just ignore this now, because I can't show it off without changing this. We have here, once we go into our provinces, so Prague, Czech Republic, at the game start, part of Austria. If you go here, we see a button to our factories. We are civilized. We have 0 factories in the state. We can build factories, and it's non-colonial. It's not a colonial state that we have colonized in Africa, for example. So if we click on that, we then get a list of factories we could build, if they were like this. Factories we can't build, we could build if we had something that we are currently lacking. Probably money in this case, because we're pretty poor. And let's see. Yeah, there it is. We could build a cement factory, which would, let's go it very quickly. Cement, picture for cement. The daily output, that it produces that much cement per day. Okay. What does it require daily to do that? 11.78 units of coal. It's a level 1. You always build a factory at level 1, the basic level, and they can hold 10,000 workers. We have none at this point, so they're not going to do a whole lot of work. Building it costs us that much steel, timber, machine parts. We have none of that stockpile, so we need to buy all of it, which will cost us that much money. And you can see how much it costs us to buy all in all. It's pretty simple. Click on build, and we'll begin building it. It will take some time. First you need to buy the material, then it takes more time to build it. And as you do that, you will build more and more factories, up to 8 in each state. You can see we have no factories whatsoever besides the one we just built. If you were to go to the UK, they would be full with factories. And the reason why I built a cement which needs coal in this region here is because this state, show you this there, the region of Bohemia produces coal. And enough, way enough to fully fuel our factory. This gives us a bonus. And Joe, if your factory doesn't get the material it needs to produce something, it won't produce anything. But if you don't produce that stuff, but someone else in the world does, your factory will buy it. There's a common world market. You can see there in the trade window, which shows all resources that are produced, what the price currently is, how the price developed, and let's see, yeah, our needs for our country and factories. Since we have none, we need nothing. But once we have our factory up, it will need coal. If we produce enough ourselves, it will take the coal we produce. If we don't produce enough, it will go and buy it from the common market, if enough is available. This is another part where your rank comes in, because the higher rank, the higher chance to get what you need. Basically, it's a first pick system. The number 1 great power, if both the number 1 great power and the number 2 great power want the same thing from the common market, the number 1 great power gets to pick first how much it would like to buy. If it buys everything, number 2 gets nothing. So another good reason why you want to be a great power and as high up in the ranking as possible. Now, in the beginning of the game, production is relatively low because there are not many factories. You only have normal people producing stuff, like this base production in our province, like I showed you, coal here. It's not by factories, also by artisans, or is it laborers? Laborers in this case, who produce the stuff on their own. You don't need to build anything for that to happen. It's from the mines, from the farms, whatever's in that country will produce that. As you become more industrialized, your farms will go bigger, of course, but the people who produce, see, I can't find anything, but there are people here who will produce the things you want to produce with your factories. It will slowly push them into poverty, and once they can't feed themselves anymore, they'll become workers for your factories. Cruel but effective. And all of that may sound way more confusing than it is, because we haven't looked yet at the population tab. The population tab is basically the heart of Victoria 2, because it's also the most interesting gameplay mechanic. That's pops. As you can see here, we have a population is modeled really down to 1 person. And you can see, we've chosen our entire country, what kind of groups, how big are they, what specialties do they have. So we have some 350,000-ish laborers, that's the type, who are Czech, Catholic, they live in Prague. They're not very militaristic right now, so they're not going to rise up in rebellion. Don't have high consciousness, so they're not going to demand things too much. They're mostly conservative. Can't really say. I think that's on their mind the most is interventionism. It's fine. 31% of them are unemployed, which is not good. Their daily income, as you can see. Because this is something I told you that factories need to buy the materials they need to produce something. Well, the workers and the people need stuff too. They need food, they need clothes, cars later on, whatever they need, and they need to buy it with the money they earn. So there is a real economy behind the system, and you need to keep that in mind when you change things around. You can see the life needs. Okay, let's see. We should get a list actually. Yeah. Everyday needs: coal, wire, explosives, and everyday need whatever. Tea, liquor, regular clothes and furniture. Luxury needs: paper, tobacco, coffee, liquor, regular clothes or both. Okay. They are not part of any rebel movement. Population stayed the same. And their literacy is 10%, which is horrible. It's really horrible, but whatever. We can deal with this. They're laborers. We don't expect too much. Now, how do you? I told you that artisans, the people who produce complicated resources on their own without being in a factory, become workers for your factories if they don't get enough money. This is the concept I mean for that. You can see here that the type of your pop can change. They can be promoted to a higher rank, or it can demoted to a lower rank. Or it doesn't have to be higher or lower, it can be on the same level, roughly. Just if they don't get enough money in the job, they will change jobs. It's not very hard to understand, I think. So in this case, of our 350,000, 9 will become clergymen, and 366 will become soldiers. In the next greatest group of Italians, clergymen and soldiers again, clergymen and soldiers. 3 farmers will become artisans. So they will no longer produce whatever Ternopil produces, but will instantly become artisans, which will produce maybe cement, maybe guns, who knows. Something in that direction. But like I said, this is the heart and soul of Victoria 2. The way you handle your population, the way you handle their growth and their internal change, well, that will determine if you will succeed or fail at whatever you try. Now the little icon here, you see what they will produce. Like, do we have any artisans? Yeah, the list is pretty big. I think it might be easier to sort it by type. Yeah, there we go. There. Those artisans produce clothes. A lot of them. Liquor. Wine. It's paper. All the stuff that you're not getting from farms and mines needs to be produced, and they are doing that until you can get working factories. In general, as the game goes on, you will see less and less artisans and more craftsmen. Which is basically the guys who work in your factories. To guide your country in a way, we just choose the whole of Austria for what we looked at earlier, but we can choose each state individually, and we can give them a focus. We can say, I want to have more people become a certain type of pop. Aristocrats own the farms and the mines. Basically, they will It's coded in the way that if you have some of them, they will increase the output of farms and mines. And will get most of the money from it. Artisans, bureaucrats, they're pretty important for your taxes and thus, we'll get to that in a bit. Capitalists, these are the guys who will build your factories if you can't or won't. So if they have enough money and if there are enough of them, they will build factories on their own and say, we think building a steel factory here would be great, and they are the ones who will get the money from that. And if they have enough and can save up enough, they will, and if enough workers, they will build a bigger factory or another. They are very important for your late game. Not so important for the early game because you simply don't have enough of them. Your clergymen educate your people, which means they will increase your literacy. Like I said, our literacy is pretty damn bad. So, if your literacy is bad, you will need those guys. You will need quite a few of them. Clerks are for factories. They increase how much your factory produces. And they do this together with craftsmen. These are your basic factory workers. Those are the smarter guys who will just increase their output. The farmers will produce the stuff in the farms, produce the stuff in the mines. Officers, which are kind of important because if you don't have enough of them, your army won't operate as good as it could. And soldiers, which are your army. You could also say you want to promote a specific kind of production, and your capitalists are more likely to build such factories if we had any. Same with political parties, but we'll get to that a bit later. That's another complicated part, or complex part that we'll explain in a bit. So, for my case, I would in pretty much most games start with clergymen, because if you are not the UK or Prussia, your literacy is gonna be shit. Like, let's look at this. The literacy of our entire country is 16%. That's horrible. It's terrible, really. That's trash level. I think among the great powers, there are only Russians, the Ottoman Empire, which are worse. That's saying something. So, literacy, as part of your population becomes clergymen, your literacy will increase over time. You can't increase it yourself, at least not directly. You can only say, I want more clergymen. As I get more clergymen, more people are getting educated faster. Why do you need literacy? Because your people need to be literate to a certain amount before they can take certain jobs, or are more likely to get those jobs. Like craftsmen need a literacy of 20%. Clerks need a literacy of 50%, less than that. Capitalists, I think they need 52, but I'm not sure. Anyways, the higher your literacy, the better, because you perhaps are more likely to promote to a better pop class if they're literate. Also, your research rate is influenced by your literacy. It's not your. It's a small influence, as you can see here. It's right on the great power. It's not that much, but rather the percentage of clergymen in your country is a great influence on your research. And as the amount of clergymen in your country increases, the way you are educated, it's combined with your literacy in a way. As you can see here, we have 1.06% of the population is clergymen. 2% would be optimal. That's a bit confusing. 2% is optimal, yes, in the way that 2.01% is useless. Your research rate does not increase any further once you reach 2% clergymen. Doesn't matter how much, well, it does increase teensy little amount, but it really does not pay off. Still, there is a reason to increase it further, and that is again literacy. Because the literacy growth goes actually further up. You can at 4% clergymen, that's the highest, that's the ceiling for literacy growth. If you have 4%, that's the highest your literacy will go. It also increases over tech, but we'll talk about that a bit. As you can see, literacy, it's very important. You should increase this as fast as you can. It's, well, okay, another thing I should add. As you can see, this is the clergyman, it's a percentage. And it really only uses the percentage. It does not look at the absolute number of clergymen. If a great part of your population would die, but none of those were clergymen, you would have a larger percentage suddenly, and your research rate would be far higher than before. It really only looks at the percentage of clergymen compared to the total population. If you actually have in absolute numbers more clergymen than a smaller nation, but the percentage of clergymen is higher, they will research faster, which is a bit annoying, but what can you do? So, we talked about your rank, we talked about factories, about the way you buy stuff, or a factory buys stuff, how it's produced, who produces it, and why you should change those people who produce it to have higher literacy. Now we can talk about the money. We have a budget. As you can see here, we have taxes on the groups. And here you see, you have also a listing of the types of pops you can have, and the groups is there. The rich, aristocrats and capitalists, middle class, artisans, bureaucrats, clergymen, clerks, officers, and the poor, soldiers, slaves, which we don't allow in Austria, laborers, farmers, and craftsmen, which we don't have yet. And we can set our taxes however high or low we want, but this is kind of important. If you look at it, if you're hovering over stuff in Victoria 2 is pretty good idea most of the time. It will reveal information you didn't have before. If you look at this, you can see we are taxing the poor for 100% of their income, but our tax efficiency is 23%. That's pretty bad. Means we have an effective tax of 23%. So yeah, at the game start, if your efficiency is bad, you can tax them for the full 100. It's not going to ruin them any more than their own life will. If they don't get what they need, they wouldn't get it with less tax. So keep an eye on the tax efficiency. You will get technology that will increase that, and as you increase your efficiency, you might want to dial it down a bit, because otherwise they're going to get pissed at you. And unfortunately, this is your income side, but this down there is also an income tariffs. This is basically what people pay you for stuff they bring into your country. So if you're now it's at 0. Let's say we put it at 100%. Like I said, for your factories need resources to produce something, and if they can't get it from you, they will buy it from the common market, from outside your country. And you can, if you need the money, or if you say, let's make it that easy, set the tariffs, for example 100%, and that means they will pay more, and some of the money will go to you, for the stuff they get from the common market. It will reduce the amount of money they have, but it will fill your coffers, which is decent enough occasionally. Though this also increases, this is for everyone, and like we said, each of your pops needs to buy stuff too. If you don't produce enough food or clothes, they will buy it from the common market too. And well, if you make it twice as expensive, well, they won't get what they need. And this nice blue circle here will very quickly become smaller and smaller and smaller, and a red circle will appear, which means they get none of that. That's a very good way to get rebellion, you know, if you're into that kind of thing. And your taxes and your tariffs are basically the only way you will get money in this game. Now the way you spend money, you have a national stockpile. You can set that however much you want. Generally also means how much you have for your army, no, for your navy and for your factories. If you have enough money, I would not reduce this, but you can. If you don't have a navy, you have a small navy that you have no intention of using anytime soon, set it down, doesn't matter. If your army isn't going to see any action anytime soon, go down with it. Education is, as you might remember, kind of important, because this also influences the way your literacy growth goes. So you want this at 100% if possible. Administration. Let's get rid of our... As you can see, it's the administrative efficiency. It's also for crime fighting effect, but basically it gets you money. That's the best way to put it. The better you pay your bureaucrats, the better your administrative efficiency is, and it will affect your income positively if it is as high as possible. So you also want to set this to 100% if possible. And if you run out of money because of something, I would suggest not reducing this, because if you reduce your budget for this, you will get less bureaucrats, which means less administrative efficiency, which means you get less income, which means you have to set this further down, which means even less bureaucrats, which means even less income, and it will end somewhere here, yeah, and we don't want that. This is the one slide I would set to 100 and then ignore, because it doesn't work out reducing this. I would rather reduce the education investment for a while, or maybe a stockpile, than administration. That's just, it doesn't pay off in the end. The social spending, leave it at 100%. At game start it's completely pointless because you have none. This is something you will unlock as the game goes on. It will become a significant cost point in the future, but not in the next 10 to 20 years. Your military spending for your soldiers and your officers, 50% is decent enough. You can put it at 100, you will see an increase in soldiers over time. If you can afford it, why not? Otherwise, 50% is decent enough. And this is basically your finances. In this case I don't want it. I usually start this at 80% for a while at least. You can also see here effective tariffs 40% instead of the 80 we choose, so it's a bit like this, like tax, but not quite as extreme. And I often start a game with this, mostly because I want to see if my if I will get a positive balance, but it's a good start enough. That would be finances. Wave at of that. A factory we haven't started yet, so that would still be building. Technology. I talked about that. Technology is the simplest part of the game, or the most simple part of the game, because it's literally you click on something, start research, and that's it. As you gain daily research points, they are added to this bar. It will slowly fill up, and when it's done, it's done. You can see that. To take 3,272 research points, we make 7.47 per day. It's gonna take a while. It's gonna take us until March next year to finish this. Now, as you can see, there are 5 groups for technology. The army, which all of them will increase the effectiveness of your army, and occasionally they will add new units you can use. For example, here allows construction of an engineer. You will then be, once you research that, you can build engineers. It's simple enough. I think there's the next one. Yes, allows the guard, and I'm looking for guns for tanks. Yeah, there. Now this is the part. This well, maybe not new, but unexpected. Not only do you research this technology and then have their bonuses, there are also inventions. This here. And once you've researched this technology, those inventions have a chance to be discovered. The academic training has a base chance of 2%. That's per month, so very low. But if you have also invented idealism and ideological thought, it will increase to 5%. Still pretty low, but it will happen. In general, you will see quite a few of them happen. Most of them, maybe. Yeah, we have our navy. It's pretty much the same as army, just for ships. Commerce. Remember how I said that yeah, tax efficiency will increase? That happens here. Further left. Yeah, that's also the inventions that reduce the cost of your factories, which is pretty good because remember, at some point your capitalists will build those, and the cheaper they are, the faster they can build them. Second line, which increases the administration efficiency, also great. Also get some tax efficiency. Now the third, yeah, we get some factories. You will unlock several factories through technology, but most of them will be in the industry tab. Factory input efficiency. That's, like I said, your factories need resources to produce something. How much they need has a base amount. There's a base amount they need. If you have an input efficiency bonus, this amount is decreased. So if you, let's make it very simple, yeah? You need 100 coal to produce 10 cement. If we have this input efficiency, we only need 99 coal to produce the same of the 10 cement. So the more you have of this, the more efficient your factories will be. This from the income side. They need to spend less money buying coal. That's great. And I think that diplomatic influence, I will get into that later. The mining output and farming output, as we've said, you have farmers and miners, and they will produce straight up resources like coal, for example. This will increase through this tree here, slowly over time. Well, mostly in the diplomats and the industry tab then. Yes, another factory you get. Output efficiency, as you can imagine, it's the reverse of the input efficiency. You still buy the same amount of resources, but you produce more from them. If you have both of them, you will need less resources to put out more, which is great. This is pretty much perfect. Yeah, you get more of these. Until you have these technologies, your factories will be pretty inefficient. You can still keep them because, as we know, from the very beginning, our industrial power depends on our factories. So having factories that are inefficient is it costs us money. It doesn't really bring us any materials. It uses up resources, but we have a better chance at buying stuff from the common market. We can colonize, so it's a trade-off that you need to decide if you can afford it. Now the culture tab, this comes to the point of sort of things I mentioned before. For example, education efficiency. As you can remember, your literacy growth depends on how educated your nation is, and that happens through your clergymen. And how fast they're working depends on education efficiency. So you follow this tree, and the education efficiency will increase. There are some inventions that will increase it even further, and for a huge amount. Excuse me. I think 50% is pretty much the highest you can get in this. Yeah. Another very important part is this tree here. Research points. This is flat out the biggest increase in research you will have in the game. It's a huge amount of research points that you get. So it doesn't really matter what else you research. The moment this becomes possible to research, do it. It will pay off in the long run. There's just, I mean, yeah, you shouldn't cancel any running research, but if you know it's going to become unlocked in a few months, you can wait. Don't research anything in the time. Research points will store. You will get an extra line here saying how many research points you've stored up, and they will be used for the research you start later on. So your research points will not be wasted. Just keep up to date with those. It's pretty much your only chance to keep pace with the AI or other players, because they will do it. Here we have prestige gain. Yeah, this increases how much prestige you get from events or inventions. For example, this here. You can see these inventions that give you prestige. Now, as you can see, this is shared prestige, because everyone can research this. This means the earlier you research this and get this invention, the more of the prestige you get. You will get the full +5 if you're the first one to research it. You will get like half of it if you're way later, or maybe even a tenth. Who knows? It will get progressively worse the longer you wait. Now, if you don't need the prestige because you're winning battles left and right, that's fine. If you're a small nation who doesn't really have the army to get a military score and doesn't have the money to get a industry score, this is probably what you're going to research very quickly, because it's the only way of becoming a great power, and you want to be a great power. Now we can, yes, this national focuses. As you remember, we can promote what our people should become or what should be produced in our states, and you do that through national focuses, and this tree here adds to those national focuses. You get more of them. There also, the game likes to use these technologies as capping stones. Events are often locked behind them. Quite a few of them even. Like, at least for Austria there's one behind them. Germany can only form after this. You will notice this. After 1850, the moment people have researched this, they will often take decisions that will change the map a bit. Like a new country will appear or something like that. Yeah, pretty much that is a tree that can be useful. Reinforcements and regiment experience. Yes, it has its uses, but you can safely ignore it if you don't. If you have no spare research, don't research it. Everything else, even the prestige, is more important. Now we come to another fun part, the industry. As you can see here, which we have not researched yet, are the road system. The railroad system. My apologies. Railroads make your units move faster where they're built, and they increase the throughput of your factories. Now we had input efficiency, output efficiency, and now we get throughput. Basically this means your factory will produce more than it normally would, but it will also take more resources. This is on a one-to-one basis, so it just means you can produce more by taking more resources. But in general, you want railroads because they are great. It's research them when you can, build them when you can. Your capitalists will start building them too because they are relatively cheap in comparison to factories, which is even better. Because once your country becomes a bit big, it becomes a core building them. You need to build them in every province. As you can see here, railroad. And yes, we could now see where we are up to date with our technology in railroads, and we are up to date because we have none. But normally this would be blue if you could build one. And you have to build in every province of a state, which is just a hassle. You can build all railroads in a state with, I think it's shift or control and clicking, but it's still way too much work. Your capitalists will do it at some point, which is great. Good, that was railroads. Chemistry and electricity. This is also very important. Usually after the research tree, this is the second thing I take. Not just because they're actually pretty good. As you can see, a population growth, a supply limit. This means you have a supply in every province, and if you have more soldiers than you have supply, they will take attrition, they will take damage. And you can if you march an army to the African desert, well, chances are that army will not arrive. So stay within your supply limit, research this when possible. You will increase the supply limit to the point where you don't have to think about it anymore. It will be so high that you can say, I will not have an army big enough to bring me to the limit. It just won't happen. But the important part about this tree, and medicine and inorganic chemistry in specific, is that there's an event, just basically a disease. Diseases will reduce your population growth into the negative, and they have a pretty high chance of happening if you don't have researched medicine or inorganic chemistry. So at least these two I get right after the research technology. The other stuff, well, it gives you some new factories, but it's okay research, but it's not the most important. There's other stuff you can research. This is a straight increase to mining and farming, and I think cars are there. Yeah. You can build cars from that. But in general, keep in mind that mining and farming, this is all money that you get. Yeah, the more money is made with this, the more your income will rise. So if your budget is negative, and you've already researched everything in commerce for better tax, this will increase your income too. It's not a bad idea to do this occasionally when you think, I'm barely breaking even, I want to increase my army. Research this or this, and you will see you get a higher income, you can afford having a few more soldiers. Yeah, there we see throughput tech. You get it from technology too. And this tree here gives you the most factories, I think. Like machine tools. Huh. It should, but I'm not seeing it. Maybe I'm just confusing it. Anyways, this tree is the one that will give the most direct effect to your factories. together with the, where was it? The, with the input efficiency and the output efficiency. That's pretty much the trees that will increase your factories to a higher level. Yeah, oh yeah, the boost to factory cost there too. Except 10%, that's pretty good. That's, get this and this. Minus 20% for factory cost. That's really good. That makes it way cheaper to build them. Your capitalists will love that. You will love that if you're not that good when it comes to money. So it's a good tree. I like researching it relatively early. But yeah, you have often other issues like your research rate, your literacy, your prestige. Decide for yourself, do I need my factories now? Can I get them now? If not, it may not be that important. Now, this too, as you can see, this increases our mines and the production output of our mines, which again increases your income. If you're running low on money, another tree you can take a look at. Also keep in mind, if you produce more coal, this is coal that your factories will use instead of buying from the common market. Which is okay, less money for your rivals. And that is pretty much the technology tab. And the only things left to explain is this up top here. Our current how do I call this? The way we research, yeah? Your military industrial complex. Which means research army tech faster, industrial tech faster, but navy and culture tech slower. This is something you can change. I will show that when I talk about decisions. But in general, I keep it like that because it's decent enough. I like my army tech and industrial tech better than the navy and culture tech. You don't see commerce in that, so no bonus, no penalty. Now we talked about all of this. Yeah, I guess we can talk now about politics. This is a very important part because it influences pretty much everything else in a way. Let's start first. This is our current government form. This can and will change over the course of the game. Because as your people grow bolder and more militant, they won't stand for living in an absolute monarchy. They want more rights, they want more in general. As an absolute monarchy, we can appoint a ruling party, and there are no elections, which is good. The ruling party means the party that is in charge of our government. This was the thing that I changed at the beginning of the game. For Austria now we have the neo-absolutists in power. And if you hover over them you can see what this allows you to do. And it's a pretty long list, and you can also see why I choose them, because there's a lot of yes in there and not so much no. As this political party we can build factories, we can expand factories, we can open and close them, we can destroy them, we can build railways, we can prioritize factories. That's how many people, or the most people will go to that factory which we've prioritized. We can subsidize them. Pretty much we can pay them government money to stay open. It's pretty important when they're still too small or have too few people to be productive. And then we come to the fun part. Capitalists can build factories, yes. Capitalists can expand factories, no. Which is a bit of a problem, but since we can expand factories, it's not so bad. They can open factories, it's good. Bankrupt factories will be roofed, no. It's also good because that means we can reopen them. We can build foreign factories, so we can build factories in other countries for them. We can expand them. We can't open them once they've closed. And yes, our investors can only build railways in foreign countries. We don't allow anyone to build. We don't allow our people to build in foreign countries. Only we can do that. The government in this case. Not our capitalists. We can invest in pop projects. and our primary culture can vote. Pop projects is basically the factories and railways that our capitalists are building or want to build. They will slowly get our money for this, and we can join in on that and say, well, you can have some money from us too, to the point that you can fund all the money it takes. That just means there's only like one capitalist sitting there, and he'll probably not be able to afford the running of the factory. Now, all of that, what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do, is defined by their policies. See our trade policy. This sets our tariff. Okay, we have protectionism, which means we can have a tariff. And the lowest we can go is minus 25%. We're paying people to import stuff. On the maximum, 100%, which we are using right now. The economic policy, state capitalism, is my personal favorite. Probably, my apologies, it will be yours too, because it is very so elastic in the sense that you, as the government, can build factories and railways, and the capitalists can build them too. Because no, every other economic policy doesn't have all of that. You have, let's see, can we get a list? No. Economic policies can range from planned economy, where only the government can build factories, up to laissez-faire, where only capitalists can build them. Once you reach that level, you can't build them, you can't expand them, you can't even subsidize them, you can do nothing but watch them and hope to God that don't fuck up. Our religious policy, this is basically only in the sense that if we are moralists, so we follow one religion and demand that everyone follows that religion, it will make people of another religion want to move away from the country. It has no actual effect on our industry or military or anything in that. Our citizenship policy, this does have an effect. Maybe if you have residency, you can see only people who are of our primary culture are allowed to vote. And the more we allow people to stay, the final level is full citizenship. That means the people who come here and have another culture can vote, and they're more likely to come if they are granted full citizenship. So immigration will increase if you allow them to come and become full citizens. And our war policy. If you remember, I mentioned that your military score, the thing we want to increase, is also looks at this. Jingoism, which is pretty much the highest military level or war-like policy, we can get, means we have an increased military score. If we had pacifism, we would have a far lower score, even though we had the same army. And now that we've talked about that, pretty much these are the policies of our neo-absolutists. Other parties will have other rules. You can see them here, the list here. There's laissez-faire. Interventionism, they're all the same for now. We could choose one of them. We can't right now because we have just put the neo-absolutists in power, and we have to wait a bit before we put a new party there. But basically, if you don't have the power to choose this, they will be decided in an election. And an election looks at the overall group of a party. For example, our neo-absolutists are reactionary. Means they will violently oppose any change to the country. They don't want voting rights for others if we don't have them already. They're the only ones who will say, well, if we have them, maybe we shouldn't. Then you have conservatives, which will also say, no, we don't want any change, except if your people are very militant. If people are threatening a violent revolt, your conservatives will be willing to say, okay, yeah, maybe we should have voting rights. Doesn't sound so bad compared to getting shot. And then we have liberals, which is pretty much they want more rights for everyone. Like they will always support political reforms. As the game goes on, you will get more groups like socialists, communists, fascists, uh, social anarchists, which are really annoying. This will add more political parties to you with different policies. In general, if you are absolute monarchy or any government form that can choose the ruling party, you will choose the one that works for you. If you're not, and you have to let elections take their course, terrible as it sounds, you can still guide your country. Like once you have allowed voting, you will get elections. And during elections, you get several events asking for your opinion on certain policies, where you then can say, okay, I would like, I will choose the option that will have 5% of my population now supports state capitalism. Because if most of your population supports state capitalism, they will vote for the group that has state capitalism as the economic policy. So you can, over time, guide your population into the political group you want. Though it will take time. It's 5% was its random number, but it will be general lower than that. But let's talk about reforms. Basically, these are the ways you can change your political system. Social reforms do the same for your for your factories, etc. Like you can set a minimum wage. You don't set it; it is set for you once you take this. You can reduce the work hours. You can see that those have bonuses and penalties to something. I mean, in this case, you don't see it, but if you have a minimum wage, obviously, your capitalists will have to pay more to their workers, which means chances are, if your factory doesn't make enough money, they will have to lay people off. That's just the way it works. You can restrict how many hours they can work per day, which means less throughput. You can say they have to hold to certain safety regulations, which means factories cost more. And then we come to the if you remember in the budget, we had social spending, which is 0 right now. But once we actually get unemployment subsidies, pensions, we will have to pay that out. We will slowly, as we can reach the full cost of this at the end. I mean, there's also a pretty significant bonus, as you can see. Like immigrant detection plus 4% is nice. Same with here, plus 8%. If you have both of them, that's pretty good. Then those two are the ones I always take first if I can, because they're just good. There is no downside to this. Now, population growth and immigrant attraction for nothing. It doesn't cost money. It's great. You want your population to grow. More workers, more factories, more industry score. This education efficiency, we talked about this. This is very important. It's a free increase to your education efficiency, and it's significant. Take it. Now, the political reforms are a bit more difficult. For example, here we have your upper house. You can see this. Your upper house is divided by the political parties, conservatives, liberals, and reactionary, and they decide if they will back a reform. As you can see at this point, most of them are conservative. So, as long as our people are not up in arms about this and not willing to rise up violently, those guys are not going to vote for any reforms. We can see it here. 31% of the upper house would say yes. That means 100% of our liberals, you can see them in the last line, and 10% of our conservatives. Now, the 10% come from our militants. This is, remember? This value here, which tells us how close how likely our population is to rise up violently and put on a revolt until they get what they want. This will pretty much each point you have, like 1.63, take it at 1 point, means 10% of those will support the reform. If you have 2.63, it would be 20%. And like that it keeps on growing. Until you have 50%. Once 50% are willing to vote for it, you can put that reform in action. And then you will have to wait a while until the upper house can meet again and do another reform. In this case, the upper house is appointed, and the farther we go, the more it will become like the population of our country. The vote franchise, if you allow voting and who gets to vote. Obviously, in the beginning, we don't allow voting, and as we go through, more and more people can vote, and this will attract more immigrants because, hey, if everyone gets a choice, gets to say what we should do, that's good for them. As you can see, in the beginning, only the rich can vote. Then the rich in the middle, rich in the middle, then poor too, and so it goes. The way the voting system works can be changed too with reforms, if public meetings are allowed, if your press is censored or not. The more political awareness your population has, the more they want this. The problem is how much the population wants this doesn't matter. Your upper house needs to prove it. Sorry. Trade unions, you can see their social reform desire, which means how much people want this, which is okay, but don't get it too early, I guess, because you won't be able to pass any of these unless you have socialists. Liberals will back them, though I think they need militancy for that, so yeah, you need socialists to pass most of these. And if you don't have them, but your people want it, you're gonna end up with revolts everywhere. Like militant socialists every fucking where. Political parties. Yeah, this is pretty fine. You will the reforms will probably put through first the voting franchise and the political parties because people demand them very early and they will get what they want one way or another. Now, this is the movement that will also help you pass reforms. Movements are when your population decides they want something strong enough to form a movement for it. And the strength of a movement, the higher the strength, the more of your conservatives will support it. But your movement also has a value for how radical it is. And once that reaches 100%, they will become rebels. And that's bad. Like we've said, we don't want rebels, we will get them, but we don't want them. And your movements, you can have many movements for different reforms. And you will always have that the biggest movement will be at the bottom. And if you don't choose their reform, but like the reform of the second largest group, they will become more radical. And they will gain radicalism faster, which means it's way faster until they become rebels. You can use that to get a stronger movement, to pass more reforms, if you're careful, but if you're not, you're gonna end up with one hell of a rebellion. And yeah, decisions. This is a fun part of the game. Basically, this is stuff you can choose to do. You don't have to, but you can. That will in general boost your country, give you some bonus in some way. Well, you don't need that one. This would change the way we research. Remember, we get a bonus to industry and army, but a penalty to culture and navy. If we use this, we would lose the bonus and the penalty to everything. You can do it, but it's kind of pointless, and it hurts, because for a long time you lose research points and prestige. It's pretty bad. As Austria, we can form Austria-Hungary after certain conditions have been met. If you hover over the button for clicking it, even if it's grayed out, you can see what you need to have. No, excuse me. You will see what happens if you do it. If you hover over the question mark, you'll see what you need to do. Now, this is kind of confusing because it's also wrong. If Italy exists, you can form Austria-Hungary. If German Empire exists, you can form Austria-Hungary. I don't know why it says does not, but it's an old problem. It's been known for a time, and oh, it's still here. But this one is just plain good. The Gründerzeit architecture. We only need iron railroad and cheap iron, which would be this and this. So we can 1863 and 1850. So 1850 we can have this. And once we have that, we get all pubs in Vienna become 20% more liberal. We gain 5 life rating and 10.5 prestige, which is good. We like that. That means we have easier time passing reforms. Life rating, I will get to that in a second after the decisions. And we get prestige, which is really nice. We want it. The South German Confederation, that's just unification stuff. As you can see, the decisions are where you can form new countries, where you can get new ideas. If you get a decision that you couldn't take before, it will pop up there with a green check mark. You'll see the piece of paper with the green check mark. Click on it, you will get to the decisions, and the one you can choose will be up top. So if this one, for example, would become available, it would go to the top. You're not going to miss it. Yes, you can release nations. Does this have actual use? Yes. Because if you release them, they're not going to revolt anymore. Like, if they are extremely nationalistic, you can just release them and say, you are my puppet from now on, you will fight for me, you will die for me, but don't fight in my country anymore. We'll do that on your own. Good. Now I said life rating. If you look at a province here, you see this, yes, this is the life rating. Hovering over stuff is really important in this game. It gives you so much information. You can see you can colonize a country only if you can meet the life rating requirement. In this case, 35 is more than enough to live there. But, for example, here, you have a life rating of 10. We don't have that. We can't go that low. Let's see. In the way with the mouse, but a life rating of 10. Our current tech allows colonies where life rating is at least 35. So until we get technology that will reduce the life rating requirement, like you can see there, breech-loaded rifle, state and government, medicine, all of these will unlock inventions which will lower the life rating requirement. Once you reach that, then you can colonize, if you're close enough. You can see we are also outside of our naval range, because we are Austria, we don't reach very far to Africa. At least not to the parts we could colonize. So keep in mind that this is only important for places you're not adjacent to. Like, you could, if you're Morocco, you can colonize this, obviously, without having to have a port here. You can just do adjacent, you can do that. But that's basically life rating, though it also has an effect of drawing immigrants to this state, if the life rating is above 40 and above 50, I think. Or maybe 50 and 60. It needs to be very high, and there are very few places that are that high. Let's see, this goes 5. Or New York? Yeah, there we go. New York. New York is a life rating of 50. So they will get a lot of immigrants. They will increase massively in population because they're very low right now. This something maybe for the Americans which will be not used to. Uh, oh yeah, I haven't shown you that screen that much ever. The diplomacy screen also shows you the population of a country, and the USA at this point in time has very few people. But immigration is huge in this game. It will, especially in the Americas, uh, a lot of people will go there. They will increase massively in population. And well, do we need anything else? Yes. You can see the tab Show Great Powers. You see the great powers here. Like I said, the first 8 are great power, but if you drop out of the top 8, you don't immediately lose your great power status. You have 1 year to regain your place within the top 8. If you do that, you don't fall, you don't become a secondary power at all. And whoever took your place within the top 8 will stay a secondary power until you are truly fallen out of favor. So there's 1 year you and they have to wait until you see what's really going to happen. Also, nice thing which I love in this game is that you can see all current wars currently being fought. Like that's, I would love to have that in Europa Universalis or Hotspire or Stellaris. It's a great feature. I love it. You can see who's fighting who. You can see the war goal and how the fight is currently going roughly. Percentage. Like just, I love it. I would love to have it in more games, but what can you do? You could also see if someone has been caught justifying a war. Because like in most Paradox games, you can't just declare war for no reason. You have to justify a war, and for that you have to justify a war goal. Like I want a state from them, or I want a colony, I want to cut them down to size, I want to free the people of, I don't know, New York. If I'm taking America, I want to liberate a country, I want the whole, don't know, Apache country, no idea. You want to dismantle fortifications like forts and so. You want to release a puppet of them, but they don't have one, I think. Oh, I want to humiliate. I'm sorry, humiliate them. Humiliate will give you prestige and take down theirs. So this is a good way to raise your prestige if you can win the war. Now, something you may have noticed is this red number in every justification there, which changes. This is the maximum infamy you can gain from this. Infamy is a limit in the game which tells the world how much of a bad boy you are. It's this number here, and you can see it's reduced every month if you hit peace by 0.10. And it says it has a limit of 25. Yes, in a way. You can have an infamy of higher than 25. I don't think there's an actual limit to the number beyond the space here. But once you reach an infamy of 25, every country in the world, or at least every great power in the world, gets a justification of war against you for being an asshole. And they will declare war on you, and they will dismantle you completely. They will take you down. It's a war of containment, it's called, and they will declare one after another, or maybe all together. Doesn't matter. Don't go above 25 if you're not sure you can take on the world and win. Fortunately, though, this is a maximum. There's a chance while you're justifying your cause for war that you're found out, and then you get the infamy. But the longer they don't find out about you, the less infamy you get. So if you start justifying taking away one of the colonies, and it takes 154 days, and they find out on day 1, you will take the full 10 infamy. But if they find out like 1 day before it's done, you will take 0.1 or something infamy. So it's not a given that we'll take it, but if you take it, it's really annoying. And if you have too much of it, you'll see, okay, I have 15 infamy. I could justify a war now, but if I do that, they are going to, if they find me and I take the full 10, I'm over the limit, I'm getting shat on. Another thing to mention during a war, while you're justifying this, it's only when you are found out. But if you're in the war already, and you add a war goal, because the war is going well, then you will always take the full infamy for adding a war goal. Not for taking it, for adding it. The exceptions are war goals you've already been granted. Like some mods have that you can demand reparations be paid to you without getting any infamy and so. You will notice they have a different color than all the other war goals, and they will tell you that they don't give you any infamy from adding them. That's basically diplomacy and war. Except one tiny little thing I say, but it's pretty big. You can see this here, how much influence you have have with a country. And every great power can influence secondary and lesser powers, which means all 8 of those can go and say, okay, Sweden, I'm building up influence with you. Like how much I want to influence. You can see I gain 0.451 influence each day. That's because we have a base influence, we have some better relations, and their score is lower than us, so we get a bonus. Now, once you have enough influence, because that goes up, you can increase your opinion, or their opinion of you. And once you have them friendly, and you're full up on influence, you can add them to your sphere. And my sphere is, if I choose this, let's go, sphere of influence. See, as Austria, all of those guys are in my sphere. Saracens? No. That's strange. Okay, no. Those guys, okay, no, I remember. Those guys with the yellow are in my sphere. There we go. You can see there, Saxony in my sphere, Bavaria in my sphere, Baden in my sphere, Toscana in my sphere. And them being in my sphere means that I can import from them pretty much as if they were my own market. You don't, my capitalists don't, or my people, all in all, don't pay tariffs importing resources from them, which is pretty big. And there is, when you make an alliance with someone, they can say yes or no, depending on several factors. And one of those factors is that you already have too many alliances. If a country is in your sphere and they like you enough, they will accept. They don't care how many people you already have an alliance with. If they're in your sphere, they will accept. So having countries in your sphere is pretty good. They will also count to your industry score. Remember how Bavaria and Baden and Württemberg are contributing to my industry score because they're in my sphere. Having a sphere is great. This is seriously good. As the game goes on, you'll probably try to get people into your sphere that produce stuff you can't produce yourself. Like Bavaria is nice because they are very industrial. They will grow pretty nicely. But later on, you may want Abu Dhabi for the oil, or Siam here for the opium. What do they have there? Yeah, there's Egypt with tropical wood in Dongola and the Sudan, or Brazil, which is also lots of tropical wood. It's an influence, and the sphere of influence is interesting mechanic. At times it's a lot of work because you have to manage each country you influence on your own, and you can't really automate it, but you don't have to use it that much. Like, you can play the game without it. It's an added bonus. You can try it. If you're not, if you don't feel up for it, leave it out. It won't break your game. It won't kill you. It's a bonus. If you can use it, it shows your mastery of the game, and that's it. And I think that was pretty much the basics of Victoria 2 Heart of Darkness. I have no idea how long I've been talking now, and thank you all for watching. I hope you get some inkling what the game is about. I mean, we have not even talking about some of the more complicated things, like how the economy works and so. But if you open the game now, you should have some idea on what to do and what to look at with just about any country. If not, any questions you have, please leave them in the comments. If you would like anything else explained or something I talked about and you would like to hear that in more detail, let me know. I'll have the time to make more videos, and I hope you get some use out of this. Have a nice day, and thanks for watching.